To move to our fourth speaker, Luca Bertoletti. Luca represents the voice of consumers who want choice and quality. He's European Affairs Manager at the Consumer Choice Centre. So what impact does regulation of professional services have on consumer choice? Let's find out.
Thank you very much for inviting me first, and apologize for my voice. I got cold and I will keep it short. As Consumer Choice Center, we work around Europe, and I want to show you how consumers are affected by regulation in professions. And not only, also how millennials are actually, our organization is fairly young, are affected by regulations. Okay. So we face a problem when accessing services in a regulated market and regulating professional services. One example can be in Germany. I know that there is representatives from pharmacists, and in Germany it's not allowed to buy medicines and drugs in an online store in Netherlands for quality. They say this for quality issue. Actually, I don't see any difference between the quality of pharmacy in Netherlands and the quality of pharmacy in Germany. Maybe I'm wrong, but. And also in other markets like Italy, which is one of the most regulated services for pharmacy, we have a huge problem with in some area where there is just one pharmacy and there are no other pharmacies around. So if it's Saturday or Sunday, you actually cannot buy any drugs, and you have to take more than 50 or 60 kilometers out of, especially in the rural area, in the center of Italy or in the southern part of Italy. And that affects a lot consumers, not just young consumers, but especially consumers that maybe have chronic ills and are not able to travel. So they actually remain without medicine and drugs for days sometimes. Another problem that we saw is what's happened with the labor market. So when we start to exit from a recession in 2015, slowly we started to reintegrate the job losses suffered during the crisis. That happened very well, and the Bruno Leoni Institute, which is an institute based in Milan, show it very well in the index of liberalization, happened especially in the countries where the professions are liberalized or are smart regulated. That's or where they started to smart regulate the professions. That is especially Austria, it can be France, as my colleague just explained, it can be Luxembourg or even Sweden or Denmark. Indeed, in the southern part of Europe, which are unfortunately the most regulated countries right now, we see that the job losses are actually still not at the same, the job market is not at the same level as before, and actually is even decreasing in some countries like Greece in this moment. And that's a problem for millennials and young population. They cannot enter in some professions. An example can be tourist guides. I know that someone was talking before. In Italy, it's impossible to be a tourist guide if you're a student and you study history. You're required, well, the regulation is actually funny because it's a regional regulation. And in some cities, like Milan or Rome, it requires €2,500 annual fee to be a tourist guide. And I don't see any students from history or any other or history of arts can pay that amount, especially in a country like Italy. There are too often barriers that are too high and regulating on a corporate style. And unfortunately, and I can speak out on this, that affects consumers. Not only because we have less services and less choice on getting services, but also because the prices are higher. I will talk later about some reforms that were done in the US and in Italy as well. But that's a fact. If there are no competition, the prices are high. Okay. If we allow to reduce the entry barriers by harmonizing and liberalizing professional services, this allows mobility within the markets. I know that we were talking about architects before, I don't see any reason why an architect from Spain cannot work in Italy. In Italy, it's required to be resident in Italy to be an architect. If you're not artist star, so in that case you can be from wherever, but to open a studio and to open an office, an architect office, you must be resident in Italy. I don't see any reason why a person from a European Union, within European Union, cannot work in another state and give their job and their abilities to in another state. Especially now that there is the possibility of sharing economy and social mobility. Before the representative from World Bank was talking about this. And right now we have a completely destructive world, which is the digital market, which is completely changing the view that consumers are actually approaching professional services. That can be Uber, Taxify, or whatever we want to call in the taxi and the driver services. It can be Airbnb in the or any other startups in the renting service, and it can be also in the nurses and doctors telemedicine, which is something completely different from what we were using to have 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And it's also something that is important for integration of people coming to Europe from different states from other countries. I mean, most of the Uber drivers are actually immigrants coming from Europe trying to find a new job. It was a plumber in Italy 20 years ago, now it's an Uber driver. So what we would like is have these people integrating in the society, and one way to get integrated is allow them to enter in services that, according in our view, don't necessarily must be regulated. Let's see if it works. Okay. There is also an example of quality. So more competition means more quality. An example can be taxis in Berlin. Before Uber was completely banned, allow them, they got forced to accept credit card. Right now you can call the police if in Berlin you cannot pay with a credit card, or actually everywhere in Germany. But not only, there are services actually that according to us should remain regulated or anyway have entry barriers that are languages or defense legislations. That are tax accountant, family lawyers. For example, I guess in Estonia, they don't have a tax accountant. I mean, they have flat rate 20%, so they don't need a tax accountant. And I don't think anyone wants to have an Italian as a tax accountant. But I understand. Or family lawyers. So family law are different state by state and cannot be regulated European-wise. So we understand that some regulation and some entry barriers must remain, but on the 1,500 professions that are actually regulated, most of them can be deregulated. And when it's come again to economic growth, I want to do two examples. One is the Mississippi example in the US, and the other one is the Italian kind of liberalization done by former Prime Minister Bersani. And regarding the Mississippi, in 1996, they decided to liberalize the professional market, especially the lawyer market and the notary market. And in 2 years, they had a plus 10% of economic growth because most of the people were actually going to Mississippi from different states doing that job that was finally deregulated in the state. It was one of the few states where this job was not was heavily regulated, especially regarding notaries. I mean, U.S. market is very different from actually European market. So I don't know if this is possible also in Europe, but that's a good example of how deregulation can actually help economic growth. Another example is the Bersani deregulations. That was happened at the beginning of 2000s, and different sectors were deregulated or open to the market. One of these was pharmacy, and we had a plus 5% in that years of pharmacies open and drugstores open in the supermarkets, especially in the big cities like Milan, Rome, etc. Another one was taxi drivers, and taxi drivers were open the market, so now there can be companies can compete on the taxi market. Before it was just individuals or taxi radio, And that helps a lot to the consumers to have a lower price. Before, it was to do from Milan Central Station to the city center, it was almost 35 euro. That is what you spend usually to go to the airport from Brussels, from here. Now you spend 10 euro when there is traffic jam. So the price and also the economic growth, because more people enter in the market, and more people, also the service quality increased. In conclusion, we actually believe that consumers are not children and are able to have information available to everyone. We understand that there are some sectors that must remain regulated or smart regulated, and we understand that some patients, some people actually need some help to understand the information. I'm thinking about chronically ill patients, etc., that are not in the digital era yet, or will never be. But we actually believe that there is no asymmetrical information anymore between businesses and consumers, and there are more transparency done by third party. An example can be Yelp, TripAdvisor, can help actually consumers to make decisions, and the decision can be done by the consumers and not by a regulation coming from the 50s or the 60s. And finally, we actually believe that consumers must have a different choice among services.
Thank you very much, Luca. Thank you.